Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to my review of tonight's edition of Monday Night Raw. And tonight's Raw was held in San Antonio, Texas, from the AT&T Center. And just finished watching the celebrating 25 years of Raw on the WWE Network. It was like counting down the top 25 moments in Raw history. And I gotta say, it was an enjoyable little special, just counting down the top 25 moments in Raw. Some of the moments that we saw and over the years that are well known. And the number one moment was very predictable. If you watch the special, you'll know what I'm talking about because we've seen it a lot of times. Probably you all would guess what it is. But it was an enjoyable countdown of the top 25 moments in Raw history. But I gotta say, tonight's Raw, I thought it was an okay show. Wasn't great, but I kind of liked it. It was an okay show, but wasn't great or perfect by any means. It wasn't bad. But the show opened up tonight, and there were some matches that I liked, some that were pretty poor. They were not that great though, but I liked some stuff on tonight's Raw, especially with Braun Strowman, which I'm gonna explain. But the show opened up with Braun Strowman coming out, saying he wants to tell, a short story about, a Beast and a Machine, where, he's mentioning Brock Lesnar and Kane. They meet at the Rumble, and how, both of them will stand face to face with a monster who is, of course, Braun Strowman. And, Strowman saying, if he wins, he becomes the Universal Champion. Kurt Angle ends up coming out with security. And he says to Braun that, he has a story, and it doesn't have, it's not a happy story. Kurt ends up saying to Braun that he almost put lives in danger and cost, them thousands of dollars for the damages that Braun did last week, where he took the grappling hook and then, tossed it and pulled on the, the thrust last week, where it fell onto Lesnar and Kane. And because of his actions last week, Braun ends up saying, he does what he wants and, what he will do. And he says, at the Rumble, if he wants to be Universal Champion, he will. And due to what, Braun did last week, his craziness, what he did last week, Kurt ends up saying to him that at the Rumble, Braun is not competing in the triple threat, and he actually fires Strowman, and that pissed off Strowman. And then Strowman ended up going on the Rampage, in the first hour, a little bit of the second hour during tonight's Raw. And we saw the security escorting Strowman out of the arena, out of the AT&T Center, trying to escort him out. And they end up telling him to leave. And what was really crazy is we saw Strowman just end up throwing the security, around backstage, and it was really crazy. He picked them up and then just threw them. He threw one of them, and one of them went into a table. Broke the table. And from there, it was just Strowman going on a rampage. And it was really crazy. It was a very enjoyable part of Raw tonight with Strowman. And then we get to the first match of the night. It was Apollo Crews and Titus O'Neil versus Cesaro and Sheamus. And this match, it was pretty decent. Wasn't a perfect match though, but was back and forth between Apollo and Titus and Cesaro and Sheamus. We had, of course, Dana Brooke out there. And Apollo Crews and Titus O'Neil got the win because Jason Jordan ended up coming out, distracting Cesaro and Sheamus, and it allowed Apollo to pin Sheamus and score the win for Apollo and Titus. So, but overall, it was a decent match. It was an okay match. Wasn't perfect by any means. So, and then we go backstage once again with Braun Strowman. He ends up kicking down Kurt Angle's door, destroys his office, goes inside, destroys his office, and goes to commercial. Raw comes back from commercial, and then we see somebody say, "Oh, Braun Strowman's coming," and then Braun ends up coming. He puts Kurt Hawkins through a table, and then what was really random was there's a guy there with glasses just standing there. Strowman ends up taking a piece of chocolate cake from him and walks off. It was pretty random and pretty funny, though. But it was actually funny where he put Hawkins through the table. So yeah, I ended up liking that. And then we had Enzo, Amore, and Tony Nese end up coming out. Enzo says, he's doing better than Hawkins, and he says he will be walking down at the Rumble, and Enzo says he's going to be walking out the Cruiserweight champion. He ends up calling Cedric Alexander Dracula because he sucks, and brings up with Enzo saying, oh, he's walking into the Rumble with stitches and stuff, and he ends up calling himself Frankenstein. So that's why he called Cedric Dracula. And he says that Cedric has to go through Tony Nese tonight. And Cedric Alexander and Goldust end up coming out. Goldust says to Enzo, if he was a film, if he ever did a film, it would go straight to DVD, which is funny. And then he says that Cedric will be, if he ever did a movie, it would be a box office smash. And he says that when Cedric defeats him at the Rumble, he will be one word to describe him, and that is champion. And Cedric says there is one word to describe Enzo, which he ends up saying, soft, SAWFT. And then it led to the match, Cedric Alexander versus Tony Nese, which was an okay match. Wasn't, great or perfect by any means, but it was back and forth between Cedric and Tony. Cedric did a good job in this match, very enjoyable in this match. Seeing him go back and forth with Tony Nese. But Cedric got the win with the lumbar check on Tony Nese. So, but it was an okay match, but wasn't great or perfect. And Cedric really enjoyed him in the match. And then we see after that we see Kurt Angle is in his office, and he's talking to one of the refs, and he's talking about Braun Strowman, and he says he should call the police and get the SWAT team here because of the craziness that because of the rampage that Strowman has been going on. Another ref walks into Kurt's office and he ends up telling Kurt that Braun is headed to the TV truck, which is the production truck. And Kurt ends up saying, "Oh, that costs like $12 million for everything in that production truck." And then we end up seeing Braun Strowman. He goes into the production truck, and he says, how about I shut all this off? And he says to everyone in the TV trucks, you know, in the production truck to get out of the room, because you know he was still going on this rampage. And he ends up getting out of the production truck. The crew in the production truck, they go back into the room, and then we see you know, the production truck shaking a little bit, and we see Strowman comes with a tractor. You know, he's trying to, and he gets out of it. He's trying to tumble it over. Kurt ends up coming to stop him from tipping over the tractor. So Kurt comes and he says he called the cops on him. Strowman leaves. He ends up coming back, and he lifts the tractor and tips it over just like he did with the ambulance last year, where he tipped over the ambulance last year. And you know, Strowman ends up making his way out to the arena. You know, he's on the stage, and he ends up walking over. He ends up running to the announce table. He grabs Michael Cole, and you know, he's trying to do something. He wants to try and do something to Cole, and you know, of course, Michael Cole is the announcer for Raw, the voice of Raw. And you know, he's trying to do something with him, try to take him out. Kurt Angle ends up coming, and says, you know, he told the cops not to come, and he says Stephanie McMahon ended up calling where he mispronounced Stephanie's name, called her Stephanie McFan, which was botchamania right there. So he ends up saying that, you know, Stephanie McMahon called. She called to say that, you know, she rehired Strowman, and you know, kind of led Strowman to you know, be a little happy. You know, he was like, yeah, you know, so he was happy about that. And you know, Kurt says to him he's still in the triple threat match with him and Kane and Lesnar for the Universal title at the Rumble. And he picks up Cole and then just tosses him into the security, knocking down the security, which was really funny. Really funny how he tossed Cole into the security, to all the security guys. It was just really funny. And that ended Braun Strowman's rampage for the night. But it was really crazy. I really enjoyed that. The whole segments with Strowman. It was an enjoyable part of Raw tonight. So, and then after that we had Asuka versus Nia Jax. If you remember last week, you know, Asuka was, you know, in the ring. She was gonna have a match with a jobber girl, and then out of nowhere Nia Jax came and slammed her. You know, did the leg drop on Asuka last week. So we got this match tonight, and it was a decent match. Happy that Naya is competing in a match, and forgot how long. You know, it's been a while since she had a match. I think this is the match. This is the first match since I think it was the Survivor Series match, the Women's Survivor Series. So yeah, so since November, Naya hasn't hasn't competed in a match. So, but I was really happy to see her in the match. You know, considering, you know, she hasn't done nothing, you know, besides, you know, have a love angle with her and Enzo. So, but the match itself, it was decent. was back and forth between Asuka and Naya. You had Asuka try her best to try to keep down Naya, but Naya ended up getting up and trying to hold down Asuka. But the end of the match, almost at the end of the match, you had both of them outside of the ring. Asuka does a kick, to Naya. Naya slips, ends up injuring her knee or her ankle, and the ref was counting to like 9. Naya gets back in the ring. She ended up trying to get up, but the injury that she got from Asuka, in the match, kept her down. She couldn't end up getting up, so the ref had to call off the match. So Asuka wins the match. Her undefeated streak is still going, and I think the only reason why she did that was to keep her undefeated streak going. So, and then we had the medical, the WWE doctors come down there and examine on Naya's injury. Alexa also came down there. So, but all in all, it was a decent match between Asuka and Naya. Like I said, really happy that Naya is competing in a match. Since we saw her last compete in the Women's Survivor Series, match. And then we see Jason Jordan comes into Kurt's office, his father's office. Jason thanks him for giving him an opportunity. Jason ends up telling Kurt that he wants to help Seth tonight, and that he wants to see, he wants to pick a partner for Seth, and so he ends up picking Finn Balor. So he wants to see Finn Balor versus Seth Rollins tonight, which Kurt ends up approving. So the main event is going to be Finn Balor versus Seth Rollins. So yeah, it was a little backstage segment with Jason Jordan and Kurt Angle. Sorry about that, but I was saying, it was a little backstage segment with Jason Jordan and Kurt Angle. And then after that, we had Naya and Alexa backstage, and Enzo ends up coming in, and he says, Alexa, is kind of doesn't want Enzo there, and says, I'll take care of Naya, and then Enzo says, oh, I got this. And so it was just that, Enzo coming in and just helping out Naya. So it's just that little backstage segment. Then we had the Revival versus some jobbers. It was pretty much a squash match. The Revival got the win with the Shatter Machine. So it was pretty much basically just a squash match. Then after the match, we had Charlie interview the Revival, and Scott Dawson says, what they just witnessed was tag team excellence, and all that they care for, him and Dash Wilder care for, are punishing their opponents. And Charlie asked them, what legend they would like to see next week at Raw 25, because of course next Monday is Raw 25. It's a packed show, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, and then Dash Wilder says, those old school stars are mockery, and that this is, people want to see professional wrestling, and Scott Dawson says they will not change who they are, and that this is their universe. So it was a pretty good interview with the Revival. Pretty good promo from the Revival. Really like that they're back now. You know, I really enjoyed them when they were in NXT. I think they were one of the better tag. They were one of the better tag teams to come out of NXT. So, but it was a good promo. It was a great promo from the Revival. Sorry about that again, but after that, we had Elias come out, and he's in the ring, of course, saying he hopes, you know, that Michael Cole is okay, and he just ends up, you know, singing about Cena. It was boring. It was. That's how it was, and then he introduces Miz and Curse, Axel, and Bo Dallas. So it was boring. Fucking boring. And, you know, went to commercial. Then when it came back from commercial, Miz was out, of course. You know, he gets on the mic and he says last week he returned to Raw after 6 weeks. And, you know, the crowd was chanting, "Welcome back." And he said that, you know, something was missing from Raw. And he said it was him. He also goes on to say that at Raw 25, he will create a moment that people will be talking about for years. Possibly be one of the greatest moments in Raw history, the next greatest moment in Raw history. You know, and you know, he says that he made the Intercontinental title relevant, and he says next week at the Barclays Center, he's going to take back the Intercontinental title, and you know, create a moment that, you know, people will be talking about for years. You know, calling it the next, you know, greatest moment in Raw history. And so then we had the match. It was Roman Reigns versus Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel in a 1-on-2 handicap match. And this was a decent match. Wasn't that bad by any means, though. But it was just Roman Reigns, you know, trying to be strong. You know, trying to make Reigns look strong in this match. You had the Miz at ringside, and it was just, you know, Curtis Axel and Bo Dallas trying to take down Reigns. But at the end of the match, you had the Miz trying to interfere in the match, and you know, the Miz was just backing away from Roman. You know, wanted nothing to do with him until next week's Raw. You know, during the Raw 25, and you know, we had Roman go after Miz, end up grabbing him, you know, toss him in the ring. Miz ends up getting out, and then Roman just hangs on Miz, and Roman ends up getting, you know, Miz's jacket that he was wearing, and then Miz ran off. And then the match ended with Roman hitting a spear to Curtis Axel to score the win. So Roman Reigns ends up winning the match. And pretty much, you know, after the match, it was just, you know, Roman looking at Miz on the stage. And, you know, it was just, you know, they were just trash talking. Or Miz was just trash talking from the stage to Roman. Setting up a little hype for their match next week at Raw 25. So, all in all, it was a decent match. Wasn't that bad though. But you know, even though the match made Roman look, you know, strong. And then the next match was Sonya Deville versus Sasha Banks. This was your typical women's match. We had Bayley and Mickie James out there, and also Paige and Mandy Rose, of course. And if you don't know the news that broke this weekend, I think it was on Friday, WWE made, you know, Paige to retire from the ring because during a WWE house show, Paige actually got injured because she had her back turned, and Sasha ended up kicking her, and pretty much they just put out an article saying that, Paige's in-ring thing has ended, meaning that she's retired and she can't compete. And they also took her out of the women's Royal Rumble. So, and I thought that that she was gonna announce it tonight, but they didn't end up doing that. So, but yeah, that was the news that broke out over the weekend. And also another news that broke out this weekend was Mark Henry ended up retiring. So knew it was bound to happen though. But anyways, Sonya Deville versus Sasha Banks. It was your typical women's match, and the match ended with Sasha jumping from the top. Sonya Deville ended up kicking her, and led to Sonya Deville end up getting the win, pinning Sasha. So it's just your typical women's match. And then after that, we saw Seth and Jason Jordan was in the locker room. Jason says to Seth, he was just having Seth redeem himself after their match last week, where they lost to Cesaro and Sheamus. No, where they lost to Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, and Finn Balor. And Seth ends up telling Jason that he has a problem of how the way he did it, how he booked the match, or it was pretty much that though. But it was just a short little locker room segment with Seth Rollins and Jason Jordan. And then we had Matt Hardy versus Heath Slater. This was pretty boring match. Matt Hardy was entertaining in it, but overall match quality wise it was boring. Matt Hardy got the win with the twist of fate on Heath Slater to score the win. Matt Hardy was enjoyable, but like I said, match quality wise it was boring. So, and then we had the main event, which was Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor. And forgot to mention WWE did a good tribute for Martin Luther King, Jr. Day, and was really good, really good tribute. Since today's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, it was a very good tribute. I really liked it. Absolutely great tribute. But Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor, the main event. It was a good main event. It was really crazy, very enjoyable main event. I have to say it was the best match of the night. Back and forth between Seth and Finn, and you had at one point where Seth actually kicked Finn in the head, and I'm like, went for the pin, and I'm like, how the hell did Finn kick out of that? He should have been knocked out. But you had Gallows and Anderson out there. You had Jason Jordan also out there watching the match, and the match went. The match turned crazy in the end, where Cesaro and Sheamus they tried to go after Jason Jordan, but Jason Jordan ended up ducking, and he ducked out of the way, and Cesaro, Sheamus, Gallows, and Anderson go at it. What was really cool was Finn actually ended up taking out Cesaro, Sheamus, Gallows, and Anderson, which was really awesome. And then we just see Jason Jordan end up tripping Finn, and it gave Seth the ability to curb stomp Finn Balor. And it's been a really long while since we saw Seth Rollins do the curb stomp, because they banned the move You know, they told, you know, Seth not to do the curb stomp, but I guess, you know, they said I guess they gave him the okay to do it now. But I don't know, you know, if it's still banned or not, or if, you know, he did it by accident. But I saw some articles that came out saying that, you know, that Seth could do the that, you know, the curb stomp isn't banned. So I guess, you know, now they gave Seth Rollins the okay to use it as a finisher. But Seth Rollins got the win with the curb stomp on Balor, which was really surprising. It was very unexpected that Seth Rollins was going to do the curb stomp because they banned the finisher. You know, they banned that finishing move. But it was a good main event. I really liked it, and it was the best match of the night. And you had after the match, you know, Gallows and Anderson and Balor were still in the ring. You know, Balor was, you know, trying to get up from that curb stomp, and you know, he got up, and the crowd cheered for Balor, and that's pretty much how the show ended. But shocked that the curb stomp was used, and yeah, it was just shocking. It was totally unexpected. So yeah. So anyways, that's it for my review of tonight's edition of Monday Night Raw. Thank you all for watching, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all back here tomorrow night for my SmackDown review, which also tomorrow night is the mixed match challenge on Facebook Live, on the not Facebook Live, the Facebook Watch though. So, but be sure to check that out tomorrow after SmackDown. So until my SmackDown review tomorrow, I'll see you all back here tomorrow night for the review. Bye.